are you mad at me? Or did that hurt my feelings? Or just pointing out, like, I am very sensitive to what you have to say. I take it to heart.
But, good guys finish last, I guess.
Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Cecylia. This is Shelf Absorb Podcast, and this is the third episode of season 3. Today I have Jasmine and Kat here. We are going to be talking today about The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley. The concept of the podcast, if you're new here, is that the first half is spoiler free. So we're going to just talk about one of the themes that we found within the book, a little mini book review in general. For the second half, we'll open it up and we'll give you a hard spoiler warning before we jump into the book portion. But I do want to give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves, say hi to listeners, etc. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us. I guess having me back.
I know, and Jasmine is a seasoned guest. So Jasmine's episode, you can find it in season 1. We did A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, but if you want to get more of Jasmine's content after this, she has a season 1 episode.
Catalina, I am new here, so just super excited to be joining and down to yap. If you know me, you know I love to yap, so excited about the book that we're going to dive into and the discussion.
Yeah, and you guys are both big readers. So what's your favorite genres? Kind of, what are you reading right now?
I lean towards nonfiction. I just finished the 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins, so I decided to do the audiobook on that. Great driving content. I actually finished it on the way here. So I love a real life application of anything I can read. And other than that, I really love World War II history reads.
All over the place for reading. I do like more psychological thriller, anything that has like a big mental health theme in there. Love it. But I did just finish The Tenant by Frida McFadden. She is a time, as always. So I finished that yesterday, and now I am still working on Night Bitch.
Authenticity is a huge theme in your guys' friendship right now. Can you kind of dive into what that means for you?
Radical honesty is definitely a big part of that, but also like self-exploration. So figuring out who we are and how we want to exist in the world. And as best friends, we obviously talk all the time. So we're constantly going through like day-to-day life and like how we navigate things and how we experience life in and of itself. So yeah, it's definitely good for us to show up as our most authentic selves, not only as friends, but like in other areas of our lives as well.
The whole like radical honesty bit was also kind of first discussed in like a dating context, like just to be like very real with each other about what we're seeing and what we think. Maybe some of that was like, he's ugly, you guys don't look good together. On the inside, that's what counts. So kind of like a silly tone to start, but definitely for a lot of other areas.
So I would say that in my past life, not too long ago,
2 weeks ago.
No, more than 2 weeks ago, I swear. Honestly, so I was married previously, and prior to going through my season of divorce, Jasmine was dating. So I was like the married friend who had a lot of single friends. So she was kind of navigating that. And I was like, I don't want to say living through her, but that's what you do when whether you're in any type of relationship, you kind of live through your girlfriends. You like to hear about like the stories, the good and the bad of like what's going on out there. And so initially it was that. And then going through my own season of divorce, it was just like getting out there and seeing it for myself. So the radical honesty was, I would say we kind of take the joking tone of like, seeing someone for who they are, like being radically honest with ourselves rather than radically critical towards someone else. Cause you don't want to be like, I don't like you and here's why I don't like you. You just kind of want to be real with like whether the person that's sitting across from you is a realistic match for you. And like what you need. And I think we talk a lot about honoring what our needs are as individuals and, as you navigate different relationship types, it's really important.
I mean, I guess we've talked about how sensitive we are to each other's like feedback. So that's a part of being honest with each other. It's like, are you mad at me? Or did that hurt my feelings? Or just pointing out like, I am very sensitive to what you have to say. I take it to heart. And I think it just makes for a healthier friendship.
Yeah. And that comes from a place of like, not being critical, but almost fearing the possibility of being perceived as critical. Like, I want to talk to you, I want to be honest with you, but I also don't want to hurt your feelings, and I also don't want to hurt my own feelings in the process.
Mhm.
And I want to do it with love so that we can like continue to grow, because I mean, gosh, we've been friends for 15 years now. So looking at the dynamic of a friendship over time, you know, you're not always in this constant state of growth. Like when you make a new friend or when you make a new relationship or connection, whether that be in like your personal life or professional life. So when you have longer term friendships and connections, it's harder to grow because you're not like constantly thinking about like what's next. So it's a new way to look at things for sure. We have life experience that has bonded us, but that also reinforces like this person is important to me and I'm not willing to lose them. And I think that that is, you know, not just evident in the friendship that we have with each other, but in the friendships we have with other people. Especially being in our 30s, we really value our relationships with the women in our lives, especially. And so it's like when you have good people, you want to hold on to them, and that requires work. We talk a lot about nurturing the relationship. You know, Jasmine has definitely given me a lot of encouragement in my past relationships of like, hey, like if you're in an intimate relationship with a man, like you have to nurture the relationship, and that goes both ways. So being able to step back and being like, hey, I think it was just in the last year that I was like, you know what, maybe like our friends are our soulmates, and like those are the relationships we need to nurture. And having a community with women, like that's not going to go away for us. You know, unfortunately, anything can happen in the other relationships that you have, but we know that as women, we're going to have our little soulmate element with each other in a way that's just like healthy, and it allows us to take space and to see each other fully and with acceptance, I think.
It is important to remember that like our friendships and the women in our lives are like who we should be pouring into and fostering. It's so much more fulfilling to like have a girls' night to really focus on and tell the women in my life what's going on too, and say like, hey, I'm hurting. Hey, I'm having an argument with my partner. Hey, I'm struggling at work, etc. Like all of those conversations feel so much better with women that are like really rooting for you and like really, really supporting you.
A lot of the themes and topics that I think will come up in the book is like we have this idea of what we want out of life. And so once we get like a dose of like getting closer to that thing, it becomes all consuming. It becomes like, I'm so close to that. Like whether that be, you know, the family unit or the career or the hobby that we're just finally like pouring ourselves into. We pour so much of ourselves into it that like our cup ends up empty, and then we don't have these other things that are really important in our lives to pour into. So I think that's another part of radical honesty, to say like, you know, acknowledge like what's happening and where it's coming from, because usually it's from a good place. It's not like, oh, I just want to hang out with my boyfriend and I hate all my friends now. It's like that relationship or that interest is giving me something that I also desire, and I can honor that desire while also saying like these other things are important to me still.
Kind of right before we get into the book, I guess just what advice would you give to friends that are hearing this and they're like, oh, I want to take that approach with my best friend?
Talk about it. It was important to talk about like why would we do this in the first place, and to be clear, to clear the, well, we fall into bouts of like maybe feeling like there's animosity between us because we are also avoidant with each other. Depending what's going on.
Oh my
And
God,
then
I'm an
we
anxious attachment.
decide to talk about the thing openly, and it's like, that's it. Why did we not just talk about that? So it's a lot better to be very clear, shall I say direct, with one another.
Okay, the word direct, a trigger.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Just being really clear with one another about, or yeah, you and your friend. Why would we do this? What's the point? It's not to be like malicious or yucky with each other. It's let's just stay on like let's stay in the same book.
Communication. Yeah.
Well, and it's also like, I would say, don't leave anything left unsaid, because you can avoid it, right? But what happens if you avoid it, right? Like you can foster this like really negative tone in your friendship, and the friendship could die, which is terrifying, right? And Jasmine and I over the years have been like, no, literally, we're not allowed to not be friends, because even if you hate me, like literally it's not an option. So I think any relationship that's really important to you, I would recommend like you fight for that relationship, because that's what life requires of us. And, you know, what happens if you do say it, but what happens if you don't, right? So if you don't speak on what you're feeling, then, maybe that silence of a couple days turns into like weeks and then months, and then a year goes by and you lose someone that's super dear to you because you were just afraid to speak up on what, most of the time turns out to be one of us being like, hey, so I'm feeling like this. And then the other one is like, no, same. Okay. And maybe reminding each other that the relationship is safe before we even dive into a hard conversation. We do that a lot, and that usually comes from an anxious space of like, oh my gosh, please don't leave me.
Which is interesting. Over time we've talked about feeling, or I guess like the concern that the friendship is like threatened somehow, when really it's just anxiety.
How do you remind each other or approach that conversation of like, hey, this friendship is safe? Like, is it just literally verbatim saying, hey, this friendship is safe, like reminder, or
Sometimes,
what does that look like?
Yeah.
It's just like, or I mean, I love the like, hey, you're still okay with me. Like, we're still good here and we need to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of times it comes from a place of like one of us taking intentional space, like just not necessarily from each other specifically, but from life or like the world. There's so much going on all the time. And I can at least say from the last time we had a conversation of this context, it was like I was taking space to organize some things in my life. And I had to reach out and be like, hey, I am just working through some things right now. I love you. I am not mad at you. And also, I still think we need to talk about some things. And it was like, hey, I think we're past the relationship safe because we've been friends for 15 years. But just reiterating that when I'm the one saying it, it comes from a place of like, I don't want you to even think that I'm mad at you, because I'm not mad at you, but I am maybe frustrated or like agitated or trying to figure out how I can give the right amount of time and attention to this when my brain is doing a million other things, or I have a lot of other things going on that require more from me right now.
Well, did you guys have any closing thoughts on anything we've talked about before we jump into the book?
No, I could keep saying this for the rest of time, that pour into your female friendships. It is in fact worth it. And I don't want to make it sound like it's like some uphill battle of like constant, like, I don't know, reassurance giving, or like a constant, like, you're safe with me and everything's okay, because we have some like strange language outside of that we seem to be on. But I don't know, keep pouring into them. It's so very important.
Even if you have a small group of women, like those are your constants in your life. Like, looking at my life now, I feel more surrounded than ever, and I wouldn't be where I'm at without that. So it's almost like you have to put your female friendships on your priority list, and you have to make the time. That's ultimately what it comes down to. It's a choice. Just like if you were in a romantic relationship, you would make the choice to be with that person every day. You have to do that with your female friendships too.
Yeah. Okay. And then I thought of another question, and then we'll jump into the book. I swear to God. What would you say to someone who is like, well, I don't get along with women. I don't get along with girls.
Invite them to hang out with the girls, because usually, like I do have one friend in particular who's always like, I am not a girl's girl. And I hosted a Galentine's this year, and she came out and she was like, my goodness, I might be a girl's girl.
Yeah.
Because putting her in the room with women who, like, all those women knew me, she then facilitated this game of like, we're going to go around the room and we're going to see like, how do you know Catalina and how long have you known her? And then she instantly started to feel connected to different people. And she was like, oh, usually I only get along with men. And it's just a matter of exposure. So like, if you have someone in your life who is like, I don't fit into that, just invite them. It never hurts to invite them. Most of the time they want to be invited. I mean, I've definitely been in a space before where I've been like, I don't really get along with these types of people. And then you put me around those people and I'm like, no, I actually really just want to feel connected and surrounded, and I want to fit in, and I want to be able to connect with people. And it doesn't have to be all the same type of people. It's actually better if you have a more diverse group of people that you're connecting with, because you have different levels of conversation and engagement. And if you don't like everyone in the group, then you might at least like one person. So,
I know, you might get lucky and like one.
You're not going to love everyone you meet, and that's just life. But I would say, for that friend who doesn't get along with women, just invite them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Reflect on why, though. Like,
yeah,
walls are up. Or I'm assuming a wall's up.
No, like for sure, explore that. Like if you're
something
listening and
that-
you're like, oh, I don't want to be invited because I don't like women. And first of all, this would be a strange podcast to be listening to. But if you are listening and you're like, I don't really get along with women, explore that, I think, because there's something deeper rooted there. It's definitely something to look into and kind of unpack.
Because again, female friendships are like magically intimate. So
Yeah.
like that's the problem. I fear you are missing out.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, I think you said this earlier, like almost maybe you can't quite get there in the romantic relationship with like a guy.
They just don't understand.
It's like just different.
It's not a competition.
No,
it's literally
not. And they're not like bad or
sorry,
anything.
boys.
I'm sorry,
okay.
but
like your friendships aren't here to
partner
compete.
cannot compete with your immediate friendships. It doesn't matter what type of relationship you're in. And I'm humbling myself because I used to think differently. I used to think that I had to get there with my romantic partner and that I had to have like that level of depth. And that's not to say that your romantic relationships should lack depth because they need it. It's an essential need for me. I won't speak
They're
for
just
other women,
so different.
but they're just so different. So I've definitely had partners in the past who were like, oh, like you act one way with your friends and you act a different way with me. And it's like, no, that's literally how the good Lord intended it, like to be. I'm not supposed to be my all out girly girl self with you. And in some cases, it's important to be consistently yourself. And there's a lot of self exploration in that. And like being able to be your most authentic self with your partner.
We talked about that.
Yeah, that's definitely been like a big thing for me in the past year of my life has definitely had a lot of that. But being able to just say like, hey, I've been best friends with Jasmine for 15 years. We've had conversations for 15 years. So like if I meet someone today, it's going to take time to build that level of depth. And that's not to say that they are not deserving of that closeness with me. It's just to say it's not even a competition. It just takes time.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And this little green book we're going to talk about, I think
Yes.
has so much to offer because a lot of us have our own little notebooks that we hide in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to jump into the book. So The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley is honestly, this book for me, it felt like an episode of Friends. Like I feel like it's very light. It's kind of a good in-between read when you need just like a breath of fresh air, in my opinion. But we follow this character, Julian, who is this elder man. He's a lonely artist, and he kind of asks this initial question of like, what if people start being really honest with each other? Kind of this idea of radical honesty that we've been talking about. But he writes in a little green notebook his most authentic truth and then leaves it in a notebook for another character to find. And then that's just kind of how the rest of the novel goes. It's about these 6 strangers who meet through the very old-fashioned way of this one single green notebook. So now this is your hard spoiler warning if you're listening. We're going to get into the book from this point forward. So if you haven't read it, then come back when you finish it. Or if you don't care about spoilers, stick around. We don't mind. So what did you guys think of the book?
I keep describing the book as like such like a feel good and like kind of like innocent, but that is like, this is just a very different read than my psychological thrillers that are
very different,
intense, just refreshing.
I thought it was refreshing as a read. Many different characters to connect with on different levels. I felt like there were, we kind of had the conversation of like, who did you connect to most? And I was like, well, I felt like I connected with multiple characters. They all kind of brought their own little something to the table.
Well, who was your favorite character, I guess, before? Or like you kind of talked about how you connected with multiple characters, but tell me a little bit about the characters you connected with and why.
Right off the bat, Hazard's my favorite because
he's
so like delightfully chaotic. And I was like, ew, like I would not want to know you. But his journey throughout the book was so lovely.
Yeah, I loved his
Such a
character
corny
arc.
word, but it just was. I feel like, I guess in comparison, we talked about Riley a good bit and how I don't think he was as quick to be honest and like real about just like what he was doing with his time here on Earth.
Yeah.
I don't know, like the least authentic character to me, or at least later in the book, it finally happened for him, I guess. But Hazard's journey was, I don't know.
You say chef's kiss, that character development.
Yeah.
Beautifully written. I personally was a little frustrated with Hazard. So, of course, Jasmine's intrigued. Your therapist's brain was like, ooh, an alcoholic. Love that. My brain was also like, alcoholic. I love that. But in a different way, I think. But,
We're like, we can fix him. And Jasmine's like, I'll learn about this.
Yeah, I was like, please tell me more. Like, are you okay?
You're like searching for empathy. I'm like looking for my next boyfriend.
I mean, I
Hazard.
also did want to know what he looked like, but
Yeah.
I feel like he was hot. I think he was definitely hot.
I pictured him being much older for some reason.
Really?
I think
Like
it
how
was
old?
Like, why?
I think it was like the way that they described like his work and like not that a young person can't be in like suits or like
he was like Wall
formal
Street.
wear, but that's what
like older than Monica for sure. I did not expect. I don't know why.
Monica, she's like our age.
I
is
love
my
Monica.
assumption.
I am a Monica. I'm the hyperproductive. Like, I need to be working towards something. I need to be striving, and I need to have something to show for it. So that's definitely where I connected. Monica talks a lot about her relationship with her mom, which is really striking for me, and how, you know, the things that her mom instilled in her affect her long after her mom's even gone. So that was really, really, really interesting for me. But her desire to like have this life, and I don't want to say like to strive for the perfect life, but she definitely has these boxes, so to speak, that she's looking to check, and she's frustrated because she's like, I need to check that box, and if I don't check that box, then like I'm not succeeding. And it's like, who are you letting down by like not checking the box, Monica? She's like ultimately unsatisfied with herself, but wants to have something to show for it for others at the same time. So it's a really interesting dynamic there that I can certainly relate to on just out of sheer human experience, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think I still had compassion towards her, but she at times was frustrating. I wanted to be like, hey, it's okay.
Chill
Sit
out.
down. Like, whoa.
Let me get you a glass of water.
Oh, girl, please sit.
That makes
Can
sense
we do
for our
that?
friendship.
But also like the parts of her that were talking about like, okay, like maybe I have to really change this idea of what I wanted and just like allow it to be an option. I know that's something that I have done in different areas, just to, again, if you create it as an option, then I would like protect myself from a lot of beating myself relentlessly and feeling like incredibly disappointed.
Yeah.
Just allowing yourself to break the box.
Yeah. I think part of the reason that I love Monica is like the whole point of Julian's project is like she frustrated me until I found out that she puts up this wall. And I think that we can all relate to that, especially as women, kind of like we're sometimes expected to be a certain thing. And when you peel back the layers and like really see someone's heart, then it can be you like have automatic empathy for that person more so. And so hearing that she like was really struggling internally with something made me feel so much more empathy towards her.
Also, like, not wrong though to point out like she finally exposed her humanness, which was so much more vulnerable than what she was doing.
I mean, the hyper productivity was, I mean, impressive. I think also part of that is something deeper that like when I see that, I'm like, oh, am I lazy? Like I start questioning my own insecurities, and that's not what she's just existing. And I'm like in a book and I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't like her because she's so productive. Like, so that was why I was like, you know, I need to just maybe unpack that not in the middle of this conversation, because that was probably what my hang up with her was, personal insecurity, not anything she was doing.
Yeah, but I think that's the human experience, and I think that's like what this plays on in this whole book is you see someone else's life, and you're like, oh, you're doing that, must be nice for you, and you don't know what it looks like behind the scenes. So like me personally, I'm a hyperproductive girly, but like I know what the behind the scenes of that looks like. It's not always super fun. I definitely was looking at Monica and I was like, okay, I relate to you. And then there were certain parts where I was like, I'm not that robotic. And I think that's where it's kind of nice to be like, okay, this is a book. And not to say that there are not people who are probably just like Monica out there, because I'm sure there are more than we know. But it's good to just kind of figure out where that separation is, because I think that's what books lead us to do, is to connect and compare and see how we're similar and how we're different.
I was really rooting for Julian. I loved him so much until we found out he was a big fat liar. I loved him. Like I was going through my highlighted comments last night, and like so many of them were just like these heartwarming moments of like Julian smelling his apartment and wanting to like hold that space for that. And I'm like finding that to be so romantic while I'm reading, and so just beautiful. And then we find out he's a liar.
Big old liar.
Again, human. He really pulled, oh, I'm just a human card. Are you kidding?
I was like, that's a pretty big human lie.
Like, how could you be so wholesome and precious?
Yes.
And also clearly with some fabulous wardrobe, apparently. And then
Love
pull
that.
this shit. And also the way that his wife just came in.
She was like, she was actually surprised to hear about herself, which if you've
She was like,
ever
"Oh,
been a
I've
wife,
died."
you usually are. You're like, oh, tell me more about me.
Well, it's always
She's
surprising.
like, apparently I was dead. I mean, brilliant writing, honestly. To
No,
be
I
able
was
to
shocked.
be like, here's this
didn't see it
character.
coming.
Well, I mean, if that ain't life.
Like what?
It was a very dramatic. Me was like, "Oh, well, now I'm betrayed. How dare you have written this whole book concept about being authentic?
Yeah.
About
But like, that's
what
the
is it
point.
that you lie about? What do you keep from others?
And you didn't write
You
that in your green
fabricated her
notebook?
death."
And the way that it sounds like he's kept this lie going like long before he even started the journal. Like the people who know him like know he's a widowed man.
I'm like, I was like, oh my God, what is he gonna like tell his dentist? Like next time, now that the lie is out, he has to
Hey,
go
she's back.
live in the
She,
world
like,
where
she found a new man and like moved on with her life and everything. And she was like surprised.
he was like, well, you're dead to me, so technically it's not a lie.
There are so many elements of their relationship that I think are just so real. And so that there's a lot to be honored in that you have a relationship and you think it's one way and it's very different. And I think a lot of women featured in this book are just like their story is that they take it and that final straw hits and they just, whether it's like, Julian's wife left him ultimately after being cheated on for so long. And then he's mad about it, right? Because he's like, oh, you actually left. That's really interesting. And then there's a lot to talk about with Alice.
Yeah.
Her marriage and the themes there. And, even Monica, where she's like going and going and going towards this thing that she wants until she's finally like, something's got to give and I've got to change what I'm doing in order to get what I actually, maybe want. So I think that that's evident throughout the whole book.
Julian writes, there is a quote in there, everyone lies about their lives. And we kind of pulled up some of these discussion questions just to lead today's conversation a little bit. But is this true? And what leads people to stretch the truth?
There are a lot of different directions. Stretching the truth. I mean, I can recall times when I was like younger and I would like kind of embellish things, which looking back is like so dumb because the story was maybe just interesting just on the basis of the experience. Either we turn up the volume on like maybe, I don't know, essentially like how big it is or.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is like how we experience events or interactions. So something we do a lot is we have conversations about the conversations we've had with other people. So if you know us, then, usually we're talking about it. So we'll be on the phone, for example, and I'll be like telling her about a conversation I had with someone and I'll like slip in my internal dialogue. This literally happened the other day. We were on the phone and I said out loud to her what was going like this afterthought or in the moment thought that I had. And she was like, you said that? And I was like, oh, wait, no, I didn't say that. I was thinking it. But, when we were younger, the ad-libbing was at large and we were like, adding details that didn't actually happen because, I don't know, theatrics maybe, but also just like the drama of what's going through our head. And sometimes those things come out as like really critical or like whether that be for others or for ourselves. And we have to kind of like check ourselves in the moment. So for us, in the context of our friendship, I would say usually it's in a matter of dialogue and like discussion. Whereas the day-to-day person, we all know we're putting whatever we want on social media. I know people who are married and have conversations. They live in the same house and they have conversations on Facebook because that's like, that's what they want to put out there. And then there's other people, like Alice, who's the happy-go-lucky mom and doing it all. And behind the scenes, she's like miserable and desperate for attention from her husband and like contemplating if he's having an affair and would it be the worst thing if he was.
That was the line where I knew. I was like, oh, yeah, she's just like lonely.
Yeah. So there are levels and there are layers to what people put out there. Of course, we want to put our best selves out there online and we want to show what we want to show. But I think nowadays there are a lot more people who are showing like real life, like what's really happening. And a lot of people are showing that authenticity online now. They're like showing like, here is the progression of like, I'm crying, shaking, full body, like just meltdowns every day. And now I am like glowing and thriving and everything is great. So I think there's a lot more authenticity online now than there was even just a few years ago. But yeah, I wouldn't say that people are outright lying. Some of them are for sure, but I think people are just not sharing the full story, and they have every right to not share the full story.
Suddenly we think that everyone owes us everything because people are like excited to just show you a portion of their life that they're okay with showing you. And then suddenly, like, now we think that, okay, because this person is an influencer, because this person is a celebrity, they now owe me every explanation on everything in every corner of their life. And that gets like
almost like dangerous, right? And I think because we live in this social online culture of like I don't want to say oversharing, because you're welcome to share as much as you want to share and you have the right to do that. But because we're so used to other people sharing every little detail, or at least what they're presenting as every detail of their life, we start to expect that from people who are not influencers, people who are like, I don't want to say real people, but people who have day-to-day 9-to-5 jobs, kids, families, you know, personal businesses, anything that they're doing on their own, that you can't require that of people. I would say my divorce was a really good example of that. I had people who would, and I'm not a social media influencer by any means. I don't have a platform. I'm not doing any of that. I have a private account and I run my, I make my little TikTok videos from time to time. But I definitely, going through divorce, had people reach out to me saying like, I can't wait for you to share your story. And I'm like, I'm not going to
share my story. Yeah. What?
That's what's so interesting about this is we live in this culture of like expecting that because we're connected on social media, that I'm going to give you deep, intimate details about my life that you're not entitled to. And that's not to say because I'm mean or whatever, but that is my choice whether or not I want to share the intimate details of what happened, which if you know the intimate details, then you know, but
it's because you chose.
Yeah. And so it's unfortunate because we start to expect that level of like presence. And I think people even like rate their level of like closeness with you based on how much they know about your life.
And I'm thinking about like in therapy, talking to clients about how you don't have to tell 100% of the stuff ever. To me, processing things when you're not ready.
The way I would, if my therapist said that to me, that would blow my mind because I give her too much context.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if this ties into like this anxious tendency that we have, because you said anxious attachment, anxious girl. Apparently we're anxiety society here today, reporting live. But I think it comes from, at least for me, this self-awareness of my tendency to over-explain or over-provide. So giving ourselves permission to just not give all the information unless it's asked for. Like if somebody wants all this extra context from us, they're going to ask for it. And if I'm giving you too much, you can be like, you don't have to like share, but not that you're ever going to do that to me because you would tell me everything.
I'd be like, that's too much detail.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a time where I didn't want more info.
I'm like, no, I need to know like how you moved and how you breathed and the speed in which, but yeah.
Okay, we talked about the social media community connection a little bit, but this discussion question brings up an interesting point about how increased online interaction that we have today comes at the expense of that like local real life community provided by Monica's Cafe and Julian's Little Supper Club. What do these communities give us that virtual ones do not? I love this question. Everything. They give you everything.
I was about to say like, yeah, like actually engaging, energy sharing and being in an actual space versus the black hole that is social media.
And I think it can feel hard to like just get up and go to a coffee shop or just to get up and like show up to that paint night at Monica's Cafe or whatever. It can feel really hard to do that when you're sitting on your couch and when you're seeing this version of the world that is so curated. So you're like scrolling your FYP and everything looks so perfect and put together. It adds this layer of like why it's so hard to get up and go do the real life thing. But the experience that you get of just like interacting with other people and really not knowing a whole lot about them is invaluable. Like it's amazing to just like interact with humans in that way, because I think especially since with the pandemic, we stopped and we just know it's almost like we reverse Green Notebook. Like we know all of these deep, intimate details about random people online and we forgot that it feels really good to just go out and kind of just know a little bit of what you're going to get from a 4-minute interaction with your barista or something.
Yeah, we actually had talked about this earlier this year after I like binge watched Sex and the City. And I had this desire to like take our girl group to like a local cafe or something like this. So in the book, I remember being like, I want to go. Like, I would love to have a community space where like multiple people know about it. And it's kind of like, come by if you want to come by and maybe we'll run into each other. And you can't get that online. We are in the age of doom scrolling, and that just like absorbs so much of our brain power every single day. But it's like, maybe I'll scroll across something interesting.
Yeah.
So to be able to connect face to face is everything. I love the community elements in the book. They're, just different types of people, different walks of life coming together. I really, really love that in the book.
Yeah. What was your favorite Green Notebook connection or like reveal or like way that the Green Notebook brought two characters together? Or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6?
I just honestly think the Hazard one is the most fascinating because he was like in a whole other country and he facilitated Monica and Riley.
Yeah, I think that was such a tie to his early sobriety. Like I have it written in here a bunch, but I think he really needed a purpose because when you first get sober and a lot is very itchy, like you feel very itchy inside and you need a purpose and you need to do something.
Yep.
And because the one tool that you had to kind of like relax or recenter is no longer available to you, I actually love that he made this like his project. He was like, I'm going to hook this girl up with a really good guy. She deserves and he really made it his purpose in early sobriety. And I think that her story helped him without her realizing that that's what it was doing, but it like really helped his sobriety.
I would agree. Yeah. And I mean, I connected to him also being in nature in a beautiful area, which often is grounding in and of itself.
I liked that because his sobriety was such an element of the book and his character. I liked that even though I was able to be like, look at it from a stance of like, oh, look at this little addictive tendency you have of like hyper fixating on something and putting your whole energy into it because at least you're not drinking, right? And that's definitely relatable as well. But I like that it was written in a way of like, this is his heart and this is who he is and this is his character rather than this is his sobriety speaking or like this is his alcoholism speaking. I thought it was very well written, even though I did find his character and the outcome of his character very frustrating. I did appreciate that element.
The outcome of his, what do you mean by the outcome of his character?
Obviously we have this like love triangle situation where Hazard, sets up Riley and Monica. And, it is that this conflict of like, I've met this guy, Riley, and he is everything I want. And she's like, I'm just not sure if I can get there with him though, like she's kind of questioning it the whole time. Like she goes through the mental battle of like, oh, like we haven't said I love you yet. And I don't know if I want to say it. And like we haven't had sex yet. I don't know if I want to have sex. Like she's so I don't want to say indifferent, but she's so unsure because there's that like something is missing. And then, and I'm just going to say it like this because there's no other way to say it. If we were to talk like girl context, like if Monica was my friend, okay, and she was like, I met this guy and he's great, but there's this guy and he's like 4 months sober, relapsed on cocaine at a wedding,
and my actual new boyfriend had to come get him.
Yeah, I like this guy and I'm going to go with him and he's everything I want. Boom. So like I was so
when you frustrated that.
I was so frustrated. I was like, Hazard should not by any means get the girl in the situation. But unfortunately, it is like, I don't want to say it's men like Hazard because I don't want to generalize, right? But like these are the men that get the women because they're intriguing and they're engaging and there's something like energetically different about how they show up. And it's passion. It comes down to the passion of like, Monica, you're, I have to have you and you're it for me. And I've known all this time. And she's like, well, that's what Riley doesn't have. He doesn't have passion. And this guy's coming at me and I am into that. And unfortunately, like, not that I don't want to like say I don't like that they ended up together, but I don't really like that they ended up together. Because you kind of get to see their like happy ending, so to speak. And there's no way to know what his battle with sobriety is going to look like and how that's going to affect her, or if it's going to affect her. It's going to affect her, but there's no way to know. So on the outside looking in, on the basis of my own experience and as a woman with female friendships, like if Monica was my girlfriend, I'd be like, girl,
get in the car, we're going home.
Or it's like, you're going to have to figure that out for yourself, because that's life, right? Like, you have to figure out, what works for you and what doesn't. And everybody needs to learn in their own time. Not that I'm saying she should have chosen Riley or that Riley was like her best match, but I kind of felt like it was like neither of them, like I kind of wish that Monica would have been like, oh, well, like I can be happy without this ideal partner. And maybe that's enough. And maybe community is enough and friendship is enough, at least right now. Because I kind of felt like that's where she was getting. And then it was like,
took a left
Hazard,
turn.
which his name speaks for himself.
Yeah. Well, and it was a
choice.
good opportunity for a platonic friendship to exist,
Right.
and to have a really good, solid platonic friend in Hazard. And I thought that was where it was going at one point, and I felt really sad for Riley, but I understood, like, it was just, I get why it maybe wasn't Riley, wasn't the guy. And I remember when I was reading, I loved that it was Hazard, but I think it's just because I really loved Hazard and his heart from what we knew about it. So I was rooting for him to get his happy ending. But definitely, when you put it in the context of telling your girlfriend, Monica, get in the car, we're not doing that.
Well,
it
and
puts it in a different light.
He was mean to her, right? So their first interaction before she put pieces together who he is, he's
enemies to lovers.
he no, but it's like, this is a man who treats you poorly, and you're like, green flag.
No, problem works. Well, it definitely worked on me. It was like he's a redeemable character.
I don't think that he's not redeemable for that. I think that he deserves forgiveness, but I also was maybe not from the person you called a bitch.
Maybe you don't jump into bed with him. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying.
I maybe needed more time, because they tied up this beautiful bow on recovery, and then a dynamic that were
well, and he relapsed. That's not to say that he can't get there, and I think that sobriety is a beautiful thing. I'm also a sober person, so I just think it's interesting to see how quickly that it was skirt, and then they're together, and she's like, this is actually everything I've ever wanted, and Riley's like, yeah, I guess I'm happy for you guys.
Oh my God, that was horrible. He was just okay.
He was like,
why do you have to come back and break my heart?
You showed up too late. You were, you readied yourself. You decided, essentially, I'm going to choose to be authentic with you and be vulnerable. Because I didn't think you had the depth to be with Monica.
Yeah.
In any capacity.
That's such an interesting concept, is this requirement of depth. And we've talked about this a lot lately, of needing depth in relationships. But it kind of circles back to where does that depth have to come from? Again, I think it's required, and I don't think Riley and Monica had it, so to speak. But I don't know. It was very confusing for me that she ended up with Hazard.
Yeah, I think Riley probably needed someone. Monica is so grounded, right? She has this cafe that she's really proud of. She is really opposite from his personality in a lot of ways, that I think that was why they maybe didn't need each other. Maybe not that Riley didn't have depth as a person, but I think they didn't, their puzzle pieces didn't match.
They were not.
I don't know why I also thought he was, did they say how old he was?
Hazard?
I think he was younger than Riley.
Riley,
right?
Just my brain was you were so much younger than her. I guess that doesn't really mean much in the real world.
But if she's settled down with a cafe and he's still traveling and just kind of I don't know where my next destination is, that's just a compatibility problem regardless of age. I will say my favorite connection moment was when Alice finally wrote in the green notebook, and what was her name? Lizzie found her or came to her house and was like, I'm gonna hold your baby. I thought you had it all together. I'm gonna come in, and took the initiative to be like, hey, I read what you wrote, and I'm gonna come and show up for you in this way. And I think that as a mom, obviously it was very emotional, but in the theme of today, with any female friendship, that's the whole point, right? You tell me exactly what's going on, and then I show up for you. And that's regardless of if you're a mom, that's what I would tell someone who's hesitant about female friendships. That's the root of it. You tell me what's going on, and then I show up for you in a way that you didn't even know someone could show up for you right now.
Yeah, that's really big. I connected with Alice so much, and I think a lot of that was related to her writing. So there's this whole incident where Alice writes in the book, and she's like, oh no, I wrote in the book, right? And she's like, nobody can ever find this. I have to strategically tear the pages out. I have to make it look like I was never here. And I could write my own book on this topic. But I just think it was really interesting to see how she was like, I need to like survive what I'm going through by writing it down, and I need to get it out of me. But I also will not be well if I'm found out, right? Like if somebody really ever finds out what's going through my mind. And in her case, I thought it was a beautiful display where Lizzie's like, hey, like I see you, I've got you. You know, we might not have this closest, but I'm here to support you. Whereas, you know, in another context, like had her husband found her writing, like what would he have done with that? What would that have done to her? And she, you know, that's embodied in her character. She operates out of fear of like, what happens if I reveal how truly unhappy I am and how unsupported I feel, like, you know, where her husband like storms back upstairs when she's trying to like connect with him and spend quality time, like she's verbalizing her needs to him and he's like, well, I don't know what you want me to do about that, you know. And she gets to a point where she's like, I'm, you know, we're married, we had a baby, my body has obviously changed, I've changed, this is like what we signed up for, like this is marriage, this is the real, like the good, the bad, the ugly, the for better, for worse. And she's over here like, I thought we agreed that like I'm gonna do this part too. And I think that's such an important relationship element because in the online world, we see people who are in relationships and you're like, oh, look at that happy couple. And you see all types of couples where they're just putting out the best and you're like, oh, may this love find me.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what
You're
it
like,
looks
you
like.
don't want to be wishing for that
You
love,
don't.
maybe.
And behind the scenes, it could very well be a girl who's like, we have to record this TikTok. And he's like, I hate you. And if, you know, you make me record one more video, God knows what's going to happen, you know? So it's really, really interesting contrast there. But I have so much love and empathy for Alice because while we talked about how she's like this, like, you hate her, but you love her, kind of, because you're like, the Alice in Wonderland thing was so corny, in my opinion, but it was so perfectly placed because those, you know, that's reality. That's what's on social media. Everybody comes up with their own handle or tagline. And you could see that she had, you know, all of this intention and desire to like, to live the life she was projecting that she was having, even though she wasn't. She was like, oh, if I can just keep, you know, Alice in Wonderlanding it, then I'll eventually get there.
Sorry, I'm gonna go like back to Lizzie real quick. I can't not feel. I had a hard time with like how they described her as being like kind of a gossip, and she like got into everybody's business. And I was like, how can that exist with her being so caring? I don't know. I know that like the dialectic exists of like the two opposites can be true at the same time, but I was so annoyed by her. And then I was like, oh no, but you're doing so good. You're being so sweet and you're taking care of her.
I don't know. I didn't really take her as a gossip. You know, she gets the green notebook and she's like, oh, well, I kind of can't relate to Julian's first entry. Like, because he's asking, how well do you know the people around you? She's like, I kind of know everybody. So when I look at Lizzie, I didn't see her much as a gossip. I just saw her as like she kind of just happened to have a lot of information, and I'm glad she did something good with it, I guess. Authenticity is such like a nice word, and I feel like we were talking about this earlier in the year before we even picked up the book, so it fit nicely. And I do tend to say like we want to show up as our most authentic selves, and something like my older brother says a lot is like be unapologetically yourself. If people don't like that and they don't like you, then you know that's for them. At the end of the day, like it's our life. We are the ones who have to live with ourselves at the end of the day. Nobody else has to live with like what we do and how we do things. So I think authenticity is such a perfect word. Do you want to talk about the end really quick?
Yeah.
The way that they're describing it is through the eyes of like some random
I know. I was like, this
coming
isn't
up
even
on a dead man.
Yeah.
Dead man.
like that's my dead
No, like
man.
as soon as they said that, I was like,
Why did she have to do that?
because he's a liar. I don't want to say like it gave closure, but in a weird way, it gave me closure for the story. I was like, okay, it's over. Someone died.
It was
really
like a
insensitive.
peaceful. No, his was like a peaceful. Like he finally found the connection and like the authenticity and the depth in his relationships that I feel like he had been searching for a really long time.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he like made peace with Mary, which I think was so important.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Jasmine and Kat, for coming on today. I am just so appreciative. It's been a journey going solo. So I really appreciate you guys coming on and kind of sharing your heart. I think we covered so much today. And I think that people are really going to be able to take a lot from today's episode. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much for having us. This was a blast.
And then you guys can follow us if you're listening. We're weekly this season. You can follow at Shelf Absorbed Podcast, and you can listen anywhere that you get podcasts. So Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and wherever else. I have an RSS feed somewhere in the world, so you can find it places that I can't find it. But yeah, so follow along. And then next week, we're going to be doing Normal People by Sally Rooney. So tune in for that. Yeah, that is it. Thank you guys. Bye.